Hello out there, we're on the air, it's hockey night tonight.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Light and the Lamp Podcast. We've got a big episode here. I'm with Steve, as always. We are going to be doing our season predictions episode. I am super excited to do this. I'm super stoked that hockey's back. If you're watching the video version, I'm going to have the different predictions up on the screen somewhere. If you listen to the audio version, which I'm working on getting all this stuff put together on SoundCloud, so we can hopefully get this on Apple Podcasts at some point. Obviously, you won't be able to see that stuff, but we'll kind of go through and explain what's going on. So, this is going to be a long episode. Obviously, hockey season has started on Wednesday. We had some really exciting hockey games going on between the Leafs and Senators. The Rangers opened up with a big win the other night. So, let's just jump into this. Let's get right into it because we have a lot of stuff going on today. So, we'll kind of start. We'll both explain kind of our predictions, and then we have some friends that also gave us some kind of hot takes. But we'll go through kind of like step by step for hours, and then we'll kind of look at bits and pieces of our friends' takes. So to start, I'm just gonna explain it for the audio guys here. I have the Metro Division. We're gonna start with that. I have the top three teams. I have the Capitals, Flyers, and Islanders in that order. Atlantic Division, I have the Lightning, Leafs, and Panthers. I have the Lightning winning the President's Trophy. And then the two wildcards in the East, wildcard 1, I have the Bruins. Wildcard 2, I have the Hurricanes. Western Conference, the Central Division, I have the Stars, Avalanche, Blues. For the Pacific, I have the Flames, who I think are going to win the West. I have the Knights and the Coyotes. Wildcard 1 is the Predators. Wildcard 2 is the Sharks. So let's go, and we'll run through yours, Steve, here as well, and then we'll kind of go back and forth here. So why don't you go ahead and explain who you got where?
So I'm going to start with the Metro, and I have Washington, New York, the Islanders, and Carolina. And then in the Atlantic, I have the Lightning, the Maple Leafs, and the Bruins. Then for the West and the Central, I have Colorado, Dallas, Nashville. The Pacific is Calgary, San Jose, and the Golden Knights. In the East, my two wildcard teams, the first wildcard team is the Florida Panthers, and my second wildcard team is the New York Rangers. In the West, my first wildcard team is the St. Louis Blues, and my second wildcard team is the Coyotes. So yeah, I have the Lightning winning the President's Trophy. So, and then I have, who's my worst team in the league? I think
the Senators, which I also said is going to be the worst team in the league. So let's kind of go through this. We both put the Penguins out of the playoffs, which I know a lot of people did not, from what I'm seeing from other standings predictions. I'm interested to get your thoughts on this. I know why I put them out of the playoffs. Why did you put the Pittsburgh Penguins out of the playoffs?
Well, so in combination with losing your number 3 scorer in Phil Kessel, and having some question marks on defense with the trading away Olli Mata and stuff so essentially Brian Dumoulin is your number 1 defenseman now. And the questionable goaltending they got out of Matt Murray last year before his injury really led me to believe that this team isn't deep enough or strong enough on the back end to fight to win the dogfight in the Metro and get into the playoffs. I still think Crosby and Malkin are great players. I think Malkin's gonna have a big bounce back year after his down year last year, but I just don't think without having Kessel as that third weapon, it really lets teams match up well now, because now you can have you can build a matchup around Malkin or Crosby. I also forgot about Chris Letang. I said Dumoulin was the number 1 defenseman, but no, they still have Chris Letang. But Chris Letang's health has also been kind of questionable in the last so many years, and it's not even normal durability issues. It's legitimate long-term health issues. He had that blood clot, he had a stroke.
Yeah, that was scary.
So it's and I'm not saying it's question the guy. He's obviously very tough. He came back, but it's a legitimate question mark when you're getting injuries that aren't hockey related.
Right.
It's the David Wright thing. He's a third baseman when he had to have spinal stenosis or whatever, which is not usually associated with a third baseman. So it's injuries that he's very rarely been taken out of the lineup from taking a hit and separating his shoulder or hurting his knee or something. It's
right.
He's spent a lot of time on the IR with issues related to blood clots and strokes and long-term health effects. So his health is always kind of a question mark. But then also, I mean, I think Jake Gensel's going to have a good year. He'll be a 40-goal scorer, I think, playing alongside of Crosby. But who do they have to play with Malkin now? Like, who do they play with him instead of Phil Kessel? Like, Galchenyuk's your number 3 center. If not, then you move him onto that wing, and hope he scores 30 goals like he did that one year in Montreal. And your number 3 center is Bjugstad, and your number 4 center is McCann.
Right.
Or McCann's on the wing, vice versa, however you want to set it up. But it's really not deep enough, to me anyway, to get into the playoffs in the Metropolitan Division, because the Metropolitan Division is, in my opinion, the toughest division in hockey this year. Just based on the way teams at 1 can finish as far down as 6 with a bad year, or 7 just because they have a couple bad weeks, because every other team seems to be really competitive. So yeah, what is your take on the Pittsburgh Penguins?
So I think the biggest thing that scared me off about the Pittsburgh Penguins is, it really is, I think losing Kessel is a lot more of a loss than people think. So Phil Kessel, obviously everybody knows who he is. He's a constant 30-goal scorer, high end, maybe 40 goals.
It brings a big speed element to your game in transition, which I also think is another reason the Penguins are slower now, because they don't have Phil Kessel.
And I think he took a lot of pressure off of a guy like Malkin and a guy like Crosby, because now when Sidney Crosby and Malkin are on the ice, obviously they're the focal point. They're the guys that you're sending your best centers after. You're not sending, some schlub you picked off the street to try to guard Sidney Crosby or Evgeny Malkin. It's not happening. But now if you're matching up your best center to Evgeny Malkin or Sidney Crosby with Kessel, you have to worry about that shot from the wing. You have to worry about that speed coming down the boards. I don't think you have to worry about that anymore with that team. Gensel's a fast player. Yeah, he's got speed. But that's one guy. And I'm not saying that Crosby and Malkin can't be relied on, because they've proven time and time again in their career they can. But Kessel really took that team to the next level. I think without Kessel, that team is probably not back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. I think they win one of those. But he takes teams to another level because he gives you that extra threat. Everyone knows how to play the Penguins. Everyone knows you have to guard Malkin and Crosby. And now this year, if Malkin has another bad year, they don't have Kessel to make up for that. You have to have a good year out of Evgeny Malkin.
And let's be real here. This is the Pittsburgh Penguins team that, with Phil Kessel, got swept out of the first round by an upstart New York Islanders team.
Right.
Which, not to say that the Islanders weren't good. Obviously, I put them in my number 2, but they're one of the stingiest defensive teams in the league. But in the past, the Penguins have just been able to score their way out of jams, and that's kind of how they won 2 Stanley Cups. They just scored their way out of a jam if they had to. And with Phil Kessel, they couldn't score their way out of that jam. So without Phil Kessel, and they're losing his 82 points or whatever he put up, that's tough. That's hard to find to replace.
And this is not a knock on Alexander Galchenyuk. Obviously, he has underperformed his draft position. He's not the guy they thought he was going to be. He's not the high-end 35 goals, 95 points guy that he was drafted to be. And I don't know how much of an excuse you can say him playing on the Coyotes was. Maybe he wasn't mentally engaged in that team. That's a legitimate concern. In my opinion, he caps out between 20 to 25 goals. And in, like you said, a dogfight of a Metropolitan Division, those 15 extra goals that you're going to get out of Phil Kessel can make a world of difference. I think it's going to come down to 1 point between a wild card berth and missing the playoffs. I think it legitimately comes down to 1 point. And if you're coming down to a 1 point game in a shootout, who do you want shooting? Do you want Phil Kessel or do you want somebody like Alex Galchenyuk shooting? And again, that's not a knock on him. It's just you're losing a lot of offense. You're losing an extra threat. I think their backup goaltending is a mess. I mean, Casey DeSmith he's okay. But again, in a division where every point's going to matter, can you really rely on him to get you those extra points? I don't know. And I think if the Penguins were in, say, the Pacific Division, they're probably a top 3 team. But this division is so good now that the Flyers aren't free wins this year. The Devils aren't free wins this year. The Rangers aren't free wins this year. You don't have free wins in this division. And I don't see the Penguins making it. I mean, The Penguins earned 63% of the points within the division last year that they could have, and that's not happening this year. I don't see any team earning 63% of their possible points. That's just kind of what it comes down to. Will they prove me wrong? Probably. Crosby and Malkin do it all the time. But I just don't see it. And it's tough because there's going to be a lot of really good teams in the Metropolitan Division that miss the playoffs because the division is just so stupid.
I mean, I think realistically, I put Philadelphia in 7. I mean, if they get reliable goaltending from Carter Hart, which they haven't had in probably like 25 years, then Philly's not a market for a goaltender. Like it's
because they're still looking for the next Ron Hextall instead of just accepting a decent goalie for what he is.
It's not even like it's not even a surprise. It's not even an insult to people in Philadelphia. Like, you guys just aren't a goalie market. You, for some reason, drive your goalies out of your market. Like, you had Sergei Bobrovsky, and he got traded to Columbus and became the best goaltender in the NHL. Like, now, so they get reliable goaltending out of Carter Hart, right? Which I think Carter Hart, high end, is an elite NHL goaltender. He's shown the capability to be so. I mean, he posted a winning record with the Flyers last year with decent numbers on a team that was pretty much not very good.
I mean, by the time he was starting, they had phoned it in already.
Yeah, so I mean, for him to even put up a winning record and like a 2.4 goals against average and like a 9-11, 9-12 save percentage on a team that's not really playing anymore in front of you is decent. Like, those aren't bad numbers.
Especially since it was his first NHL ice.
Yeah. So but if he can play the way we all think he can, and if the defense ends up being as good on ice as it is on paper with, you know, Shane Gostisbehere, Ivan Provorov, Travis Sanheim.
Well, okay, on that point, not to interrupt you or anything, but that's something I wanted to talk to you about because I put them second in the Metropolitan Division, and I put them there entirely almost on the strength of this defense that you're talking about. Because their top 6 defense right now is Gostisbehere, Provorov, Sanheim, Niskanen, Braun, and Hague, however you want to say his name. That blows my mind that some of those guys are going to be playing bottom 6 minutes. And I don't really think they're going to run a traditional top 2 gets 30 minutes, top 4 gets 20.
I mean, with as deep as it is, you really can't.
And that's honestly the reason I put them as high as second, because I think they can score goals. We know that they can score goals. Konechny, he had a great game today over in the Czech Republic in a big win for the Flyers over the Blackhawks. We know Giroux can score goals and Voracek can score goals. I think that defense is probably, on paper, top 3 defenses in the league, when probably one of Provorov, Sanheim, Gostisbehere, Niskanen, and Braun is going to be playing bottom 6 minutes. And obviously, I think they're probably going to use it as, okay, Braun, maybe you play bottom 6 minutes, but you get all the penalty kill time, something like that.
Yeah.
But you didn't put them that high, and I want to hear your thoughts on that.
So they got a new coach in Alain Vigneault, right? And Alain Vigneault coached the Rangers,
which you know AV very well.
So my thing with it is, like, the way he likes to play the game, I don't know if some of those guys are still fast enough to keep up with that kind of system. So which when the Rangers ran into that issue, like in the last 2 years of AV's, you know, tenure with us, they couldn't keep up with how fast he wanted to play and as fast as the forwards wanted to play.
Right.
That it led to a lot of breakdowns because people blew coverages because they couldn't skate the way that he thought they could. I mean, let's take a look at it realistically. Like, Niskanen's on the back end of his career. He's over 32. I think he's 35 maybe. Tail end of his career, not the skater he was when he got that big contract in Washington.
He's not the high-end top 4 offensive guy that he was in his prime.
I mean, even like Robert Hague isn't the fastest skater in the world. I think he's good. He's very good, but he's not the fastest skater in the world. So in transition, it's not, you know, he's not going to beat anybody out in transition. And if he does try to one of those long stretch passes that AV likes to use and gets caught, I don't know if he's going to be able to get back. Tristan Braun, again, never been the fastest guy in the league. Can skate, not the fastest guy, not the most mobile defenseman I've ever seen. That being said, though, you have Provorov, who's proven to be highly mobile, very fast. Shane Gostisbehere, very fast. And Travis Sanheim, highly mobile for his size. So when it's split down the even, it's kind of a coin flip, right? And I'm just flipping the coin and saying that the Flyers as a whole aren't fast enough to play the way AV wants to, and it's going to lead to a lot of breakdowns in coverage. Also, I'm taking into account that it's the first year with the team, with a new coach, and under a new coach, it usually takes a lot of time to adjust, especially when coming from their previous coach, who wasn't as offensive minded or as like pushing the pace as AV likes to be. I think that it's going to take some time to adjust to that. So I accounted for a couple of bad months in October, November, and maybe even parts of December.
Which can kill a season.
Right, exactly. So I accounted for some maybe 500, sub 500 seasons, months, where in the second half of the season, I think they might be a very formidable team, and they might make a climb. They might climb it, like, scratch and claw their way into a wild card. But I just don't think with how good this division is that you can't afford a couple of bad months to get used to a new coach. You can't lose out on those points.
So, I do want to ask you something here. Going on the new coach train, I put Florida as being in a divisional spot. I have them as the third divisional spot in the Atlantic. You put them in the first wild card spot. Our friend Tim didn't even put them in the playoffs, and our friend Ryan just put them just outside the playoffs. I guess this is a twofold question. What do you think of the Florida Panthers, and do you think that you're going to see that new coach inertia with Joel Quenneville down in Florida?
I think Florida, in particular, should have been a playoff team last year. I think their core...
I think they missed by 2 points?
Something like that.
They were close. Montreal was close too at the end.
I think that their core is good. Everybody knows about their core, right? Barkov, Huberdeau, Ekblad, and you add Yandel to that, and you have guys like...
Apparently Evgeny Dadonov just put up 70 points and nobody talked about it.
Exactly.
Nobody cared.
And then even without Nick Bjugstad, you still have... he was injured most of last year. He came back in the middle of the year. Why can't I remember? I can see his face. Vincent Trocheck. And then you even still have Mike Hoffman, who put up 28 goals or something close to 30 last year. So, they can score. Their defense looks good. And they added the best goaltender in the league, in my opinion, in Sergei Bobrovsky. And Sergei Bobrovsky proved he could take an average Columbus team and put them into the playoffs before Columbus had the young core that we see with them they have now, like Seth Jones and Zach Werenski. They'd made the playoffs prior to that on some pretty middling seasons, purely on the strength of the fact Sergei Bobrovsky could steal games for them. So I think the new coach inertia problem might be neutralized by the fact that they have a goaltender that they can steal them games. So I think that they might struggle a little bit, and I also think that whereas they might go 500 in a couple months, their division isn't as strong as the Metropolitan, where those 500 months can be made up for in the second half of the season.
Right.
Because they'll be seeing teams like Ottawa and Detroit and Buffalo a lot more than they see other teams, whereas Philly losing out, we'll see teams like Pittsburgh, New Jersey, Columbus, the Rangers, all teams that in theory could make the playoffs.
Right.
Like Ottawa's not making the playoffs, Detroit's not making the playoffs, Buffalo probably isn't making the playoffs. I'm not saying they're free wins, but if you have a goaltender that can steal you games, he can steal you a game against the Ottawa Senators, because who's scoring goals in the Ottawa Senators? You know what I mean? Even Detroit, he can steal games from you, because if you can match up decently against their top line, their goal scoring kind of dries up. So you have a team that could go 500, and then when they finally figure it out and be good in the second half, that they really could make a push for it. I have them in the wild card, the first wild card, because I think it'll be close between them and the Bruins. But I just think the Bruins not having that issue of a new coach and having a system in place, and at this point their core, you can expect them to be decent. And I know they lost a couple of depth players like Nola Chari in the offseason, but I still think the Bruins as a whole are a strong hockey team, and they're a force to be reckoned with. So I think they'll finish ahead of the Panthers, just based entirely on the fact that the Panthers might lose out on some games early in the season because they're trying to buy into a new system.
So I actually have the Bruins in a wild card spot, which a lot of people, when I was talking to my coworkers, they gave me grief for that. And obviously the difference between a wild card spot and a divisional spot oftentimes isn't really that big. Sometimes it can come down to like 1 or 2 points. So really this is just nitpicking between the differences. I think for the Bruins, losing Marcus Johansson, I think, was a bigger loss than a lot of people are going to realize. I always look at teams' depth, and deep teams win playoffs. Deep teams win games. And I'm not saying the Bruins don't have the depth anymore. Obviously, they're a very good team. The core is still intact. I just think that losing that flexible third-line center / second-line winger kind of guy means more than people will think. And we got to be honest here. As much as Chara has been able to turn the clock back, what are you going to get out of him this year is a big question mark for me. I think Torrey Krug, and I love Charlie McAvoy. I think McAvoy's going to have a huge year this year. I love what the guy brings on the ice, but we can't discount just how much Chara has meant to this team over the years, especially on the penalty kill. And, I don't think the Atlantic Division is as good a division. I would say that's probably the third best division in hockey right now. But I just think that the Panthers team is going to be revamped. I think their offense is going to be much better this year because they're not going to be afraid to take those chances because they're like, oh God, if this goes wrong, this is in the back of my net because I either have Luongo whose body's caught up to him or I have James Reimer who for some reason couldn't stop a beach ball last year to save his life. But I like the Panthers. I think they're going to do well this year. And I look forward to seeing what Bobrovsky can do. He didn't have a great first game, but he was playing the Lightning, and the Lightning are a powerhouse team. They're just ridiculous, and some of those
the Panthers
goals
as a whole didn't really look that great against the Lightning.
And I think two of them came on the power play, and then one of them came right as it expired, so the clock ticked off. So it technically wasn't a power play goal, but the guy didn't have time to get back into play, something like that. So I think the Panthers will be okay. I think the Sabres had a really good first game. They go into the Penguins arena at the Penguins home opener and basically shut them down 3-1. But I agree. I don't think they're going to get close. One team in the Atlantic I do want to talk about because they're always interesting to me is the Canadiens, who we both have out of the playoffs. What are your thoughts on Montreal?
I think Montreal added. They can always sneak in, right? You can't discount Carey Price. The Carey Price factor to me is a lot like the Sergei Bobrovsky factor. Easily top 5 goaltender in the NHL, and it's proven in the past that he's a Hart Trophy caliber goaltender. The last guy to do that was, I don't even remember who the last goaltender when
I couldn't tell you
the
off
Hart
the top of
Trophy
my head. I
was.
have no idea.
And I know it was 20 years ago or something, but
Might have been Giguere.
Maybe.
I don't think Giguere ever won a Hart.
But so you can't discount Carey Price, and then if you have a healthy Shea Weber's a stabilizing force in the back end. I'm pretty sure they signed Ben Sherratt coming out of Winnipeg, so Ben Sherratt's a good defenseman. He'll help shore up their top 4. They lost Jordy Ben to Vancouver, which I think was kind of a big because Jordy Ben's a good stay-at-home, quiet defenseman.
Very underrated.
They still have Jeff Petrie. Jeff Petrie's good. He's decent. He's a good number 3 guy for them. And their goal scoring isn't bad. They have Max Domi. You have Brendan Gallagher. That's actually the issue. Is I don't think they're going to score a lot of goals.
I was going to say
you have Max Domi, Brendan
worry.
Gallagher. Paul Byron's okay. He's a good number 3, good in the number 3 hole. But I just don't think there's enough goal scoring there to be able to compete with teams like Florida, Boston, Toronto, Tampa. Those teams are all deep. Tampa Bay has 3 lines.
Goals.
Tampa Bay has 3 lines that can score goals.
Yeah.
Toronto has arguably 3 lines that can score goals. Boston arguably has 3 lines that can score goals. And Florida's top heavy. They have 2 lines that can score goals. But only 2 lines can score goals. Whereas in Montreal, you have 1 line scoring goals. And if Max Domi doesn't have another season like he had, I don't even think they get a sniff at the playoffs. I have them in number 5 by virtue of I think Buffalo, Detroit, and Ottawa really can't compete for playoff spots. I like Buffalo, I like their core, and I like where they're going, but I just don't think that the culture in that team right now is so toxic. It drove Ryan O'Reilly away. Rasmus Ristolainen doesn't want to play, and their goaltending is also questionable. It's suspect to me up there because they have Carter Hutton,
and what's his face on the back end?
I think it's Linus Ullmark. Maybe.
Yes, I think Linus Ullmark is.
So that's really the only reason I have Montreal ahead of them because Montreal's Carey Price, and they also have Keith Kincaid, and they also have they have a decent enough defense. But if they're not, their offense doesn't. If they don't get a surprise out of a guy like Nick Suzuki, putting up 75 points all of a sudden, their offense really just isn't there for me, and I really don't even think they get a sniff. I think they're behind Florida by a good 8 or 9 points by the end of the season.
So here's the problem, right? Because I love Carey Price. I love watching him play. I think he's a great goaltender. It's the Anaheim problem right now. where Anaheim had a huge goal scoring problem last year. They were, I think, the second or the worst team goals per game last year. This is the problem with having your only game breaker be in net. You can have game breakers in net. I mean, the Rangers had Henrik Lundqvist in his prime, absolute game breaker. The guy could go out and make a 50-save shutout. Rangers win 1-0 on some fluke bounce, right?
Right.
But they also had Marian Gaborik, who's a game breaker. Brad Richards had some good seasons with the team before he kind of fell off. They had other guys that could make that play. Martin St. Louis had very good seasons, especially in the playoffs. He was a whole other beast with the New York Rangers. The problem with the Montreal Canadiens, push comes to shove, knuckle down, you need a goal late in the third period. Who are you calling on? I mean, Thomas Tatar, to me, is good for 20 to 25. Max Domi hit 30 last year. I think that's his cap. I really can't see him going anywhere beyond 33, 34. I don't think he's ever going to sniff 40. You're looking at Nick Suzuki they're relying on. He's coming in, young guy. I think he's a great player, but I don't think he's going to come in and light the league on fire. 50 goals doesn't really seem like that kind of player.
I mean, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, their number 3 overall pick from a couple years ago, is not exactly an offensive dynamo. His game is more well-rounded than that, so
he looks like he's going to slot into middle six, and it just... Brendan Gallagher, can he be a 40-goal scorer? Yes, but we had this conversation the other day. This is the Anders Lee situation where he's not an offensive engine. He's not the engine that drives the car. He's more like the I forget what the term we really used was. He's not the engine that drives the car, but he's the oil that's in the machine. He's a vital part of the machine. You can't have a car without oil. It'll seize up and stop working. But he's not the guy that's going to drive the offense. Anders Lee's not going to come down and snipe from the wings for 40 goals a year. Joe Pavelski's not going to come down and be ripping bar down one-timers in the circles. He's not an engine guy, but as soon as he's off the team, you really notice that he's not there. All of a sudden, the goalie can see every shot. He's stopping 40 shots a night because he sees every single one. So I don't think Brendan Gallagher's an engine. I don't think this team has any offensive drivers. They don't have a game-breaking offensive defenseman. Shea Weber, like you said, is a shutdown defensive kind of guy. I don't know where they're getting goals from on this team, and that's what worries me. Can Carey Price win you 10 to 12 1-0 games a year? Yeah, he can do that. Can he win you 45 games if he has no goal scoring, get you into the playoffs? No. I hate to see it because I love Carey Price, but I don't. Where's this team getting goals from? Can Tatar have a 30-goal season? Sure. Can Domi have a 30-goal season? Sure. And that's not to say teams can't make the playoffs with no 30-goal scorers. I mean, the Islanders, I think, didn't even have a 30-goal scorer last year. Or maybe one. I think Anders Lee might have broke 30. That's not to say that the team can't do it, but those are extraordinary circumstances. You have to be the best defensive team in hockey to make the playoffs like that. And I don't see the Canadiens as being able to do it, not just because of the defense, but also just because, what are you getting... Some random guy's calling me. Sorry about that. What are you getting out of the team, and what are you really getting out of the coach? Is that system in place? I don't think so, and it pains me to say that because I love watching Carey Price play, but I don't think he's going to be playing deep into the season this year. I agree. I think they're going to be kind of out on the edge for a large part of the season. One team I do want to talk to you about, well, kind of two in tandem. We're going to talk about here the Rangers and the Jets. Big first game for both teams. Kind of a mess defensively, which is what we really expected out of both teams. Let's start with the Rangers first. I know you know them very well. I put them out of the playoffs. I think they're going to be playing meaningful games deep down the stretch into April. I want to hear your thoughts on why you put them in. I'll kind of explain my thoughts on why I put them out. And then we're going to talk about the Jets, who might be the biggest disappointment in the NHL, but we'll get to them later. What are your thoughts on the New York Rangers?
I have the Rangers in just because, I'm a hometowner. No, I'm kidding. But I think they're the team here. Like, there's some question marks at center that obviously everybody's asking, because who's the number 2 center? Like, Mika Zibanejad, solidified himself as a legitimate elite number 1 center in the NHL by scoring, 70 points last year, 30-plus goals. He proved he's a guy that you can rely on. And then you add Artemi Panarin up front, and I think, that's 87 points coming over that playing alongside you can be, can really help push a team over the edge. Because now there's not a question about, can the Rangers score goals anymore?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's questioning.
The John Tortorella Rangers had, some question marks about being able to score goals. The Alain Vigneault Rangers didn't really for a couple of years, but then at the end of his tenure, they had some question marks about being able to score goals. Last year, they really weren't scoring a lot of goals. I mean, the team was also kind of new. The season was over when it started, but that's a whole different story. But I think now the offense is better. It's more well-rounded. And then you add number 2 overall pick Capo Caco to the top 6 alongside, Buchnevich and Kreider and guys who have a lot of upside. Like, I think Kreider finally hits that 30-goal mark that he's been trying to hit for years, but for some reason never does. I mean, he had 26 goals going into February, and he scored 2 down the stretch when the team needed him. So I also don't think Chris Kreider is here at the end of the year because if it's a contract situation, that's a whole other issue.
That's another question mark hanging over the team.
But, their defense is questionable. I mean, Jacob Trouba's good. Everybody knows Jacob Trouba's good.
He had a really good first game. I mean, he was, not even just because he scored, he was all over the ice.
Like, I think he's going to relish the opportunity to be the number 1 defenseman on an up-and-coming team. Mark Stahl has looked better this year than he has in a long time.
Scoring on a wraparound, by the way. Like,
I don't even know why he was down there. But then you add in Adam Fox, who's also, got a lot of high upside. Tony DeAngelo's back. Libor Hayek is playing. I mean, Brady Shea's Brady Shea. Like, he's a question mark to me. I don't know if he's ever going to put it all together and actually be the guy that we thought he was going to be when we signed that contract. But it's neither here nor there. And then on the outside, you have Ryan Lindgren, who looked really good in camp. And I think he's ready to take the next step, but it's just log jammed because of contracts like Mark Stahl's and stuff like that. I mean, Brendan Smith is playing shifts at defense on the penalty kill. Brendan Smith is also a guy that I just don't understand what the team is so attached to about him because he brings an element to the team that we can get in Michael Haley, who's also on the roster. So I don't see the point in keeping Brendan Smith with this, like, Swiss Army knife mentality because, like, I just don't think it's going to work out in the long run, but whatever. And goaltending-wise, I think Henrik Lundqvist and Alexander Georgiev looked really good in preseason. I think Georgiev's only getting better. I wouldn't be surprised to see Georgiev start more games than Henrik Lundqvist this season for the first time in Henrik Lundqvist's career, outside of the injured season where Cam Talbot started more than he did. That's because Lundqvist almost died. But, I mean, I don't think it's crazy to think Georgiev gets like 45 plus starts over Henrik Lundqvist. Because they have to, I think especially Henrik Lundqvist now, you have to try to manage his minutes better than you did before because it was very clearly evident last year that after starting so many games with such a heavy workload in the first half where the Rangers looked competitive, that in the second half he just wasn't ready to do it and he melted down. Granted, the team around him wasn't very good and I think he started to mail it in after the deadline, but he melted down. Like, the Georgiev shined down the stretch. I mean,
Hank's getting older and he's played a lot of games. I mean, the Rangers used to go deep into playoffs. That's just
the mileage.
He's played so many extra games,
The mileage, I mean, like, think about it. He's an engine that's got like 200,000 miles on it. At some point, you're going to start having some issues.
Yeah.
And it's never a bad idea to have a second engine ready to go.
Right.
So, Georgiev, I think, is ready to take that step. And then next year, there's an even bigger question mark because Henrik Lundqvist ends up in either the penultimate or the final year of his contract with, Igor Shesterkin breathing down his neck.
Knocking on the door.
Ready to be, like, the number 1 in waiting. Like, he went down to Hartford, and I think that's fine because he's got to get used to the NHL ice. I mean, coming over from Russia is not easy for anybody.
Especially for goaltenders.
Because now the shots are coming in from a lot closer than they used to, and there's a lot more traffic in front of the net than there is in the KHL because 100 feet on the ice means guys don't bunch up the way they do in the NHL on the 85 feet.
Right.
The game's a lot faster on the NHL ice. So I think it'll be fine, but that's really the question mark. It's like if they can get Lundqvist, like, by some miracle, like, prime Henrik Lundqvist goaltending for any stretch of the season the way they did last year, and they can get Georgiev, like, good solid goaltending the way they got it at Georgiev, I think that can really elevate the team, especially with the way that I think they're going to score goals. I mean, like, I think the Rangers power play might be one of the most lethal in the NHL just based on its number 1 unit being Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, Pavel Buchnevich, Jacob Trouba, and throw whoever else you want on that other point.
That doesn't even matter at that point.
Can go there, like Alex DeAngelo can go there, like Chris Kreider, like you can throw whoever you want there, and I think that it's a lethal
basically
power
doesn't
play.
even matter who's the 5th guy.
It's like a lethal combination. So I think their special teams might elevate them too, and like that might help separate them by winning them some games. And the penalty kill looks okay. I think it'll be like middle of the road penalty killing wise. They might be like close to reaching the top 10. They might be like number 12 or 13 out of a 31 team league. But that all being said, I just think like overall they might be able to score their way into the playoffs in a way that a team like the Penguins can't, or that a team like Montreal can't. Whereas Montreal has solid defense and goaltending, I don't think they're going to be able to score any goals. Whereas the Rangers' defense might be a little looser. Their goaltending is just as good as as Montreal's, in my opinion. In terms of a tandem, I think Carey Price is in his prime still, whereas Lundqvist has since passed his prime. But I think as a tandem, I think Georgiev is better than Keith Kincaid, so I think he'll win them more. He'll end up winning the team overall more games than Keith Kincaid will win his team. And combine that with I think it's an elite top six, the Rangers really can compete with any team in this league, especially if they make a move for a number 2 center, or if a guy like Elias Anderson proves throughout the season that he is ready to take the number 2 center job from somebody like Ryan Strome. So I think that they can make it.
I really badly wanted to put them in, and I had them in the second wildcard spot for a long time, and it wasn't until I really took a look at the center's depth and the defense. And Lundqvist and Georgiev looked excellent preseason. Lundqvist turned the clock back like 6 years in preseason. He looked fast. He looked on his game. He looked mentally engaged. I thought he had an okay opening night. That second Blake Wheeler goal was so uncharacteristically Lundqvist that I was shocked that it went in.
Oh, when he just fired it through his legs from the top of the circle?
Yeah, when he just beat him clean 5-hole. I mean, I thought some of the other goals, of course there was a power play goal. I thought one of them, the one that kind of snuck under his arm, again, not really characteristic of Lundqvist, but again, it's only game 1. Goalie's got to shake off that rust too, especially for Lundqvist, who isn't really used to such a long off season. It's just, I think the Rangers are going to score a ton of goals. I think they're going to be top 5 for goal scoring this year. It's the center depth that really has me worried, because Zibanejad is an elite top-line center. I love what he brings to the team. It's just, when you look at the quality of centers he's going to be playing, the second line and third line centers going to be playing against, it makes me have questions, because who can you really match up with on an Evgeny Malkin? Even the Islanders, who don't really have what I would consider a game-breaking center. Of course, you have Matt Barzal. I'm not going to disparage him at all, but Brock Nelson's a second-line center. And then you have Brassard, who is a really good third-line center. And then Cizikas, who might be one of the best fourth-line centers in the game. It makes you question how they're going to match that up. And we know the defense is young. I think you give this defensive core, if they can stay intact 2 seasons, 3 seasons, they'll probably be, if not the best, because I think the Flyers might end up having the best with all the youth that they have, the second best defensive core in the National Hockey League if they stay together. I'm just not sure that they're there yet. And again, I love the way Lundqvist looked in preseason, and I really do think they're going to be playing meaningful hockey down until the last game of the season. I just don't know that their centers can hold up defensively, and that defensive core makes me question it. If this was prime Henrik Lundqvist, he could play behind that defensive core and be fine. It's just that he's getting older. I think Georgiev is a great backup goalie. I don't think he's prime Henrik Lundqvist just yet. And I love the way the Rangers team is looking. I think if this core stays together in 2-3 years, they're going to be making deep playoff runs. They're going to be making a lot of noise in the playoffs. I just don't know that they're there yet. Would it surprise me if they're even competing for a divisional spot? No. I could totally see this team doing it. And that's the other problem with the Metro, is it's such a coin flip with so many of these teams that you just don't know what you're getting out of them. I just don't know that they're there yet, but if they make me eat my words and they're competing for a divisional spot, or even if they lock up a wild card early, would not surprise me at all.
Yeah, no, it's a fair take. I mean, I could totally understand people saying the Rangers aren't going to make it, but like I think everyone can agree they'll be playing meaningful hockey late into the season.
They're not going to be phoning it in at the trade deadline. They're going to be competing down to game 82.
Like, they might miss by like 4 points, which is like, that's not a lot in the NHL. That's 2 games.
Yeah, I think they'll be within. I think my first team out is the Penguins, and then it's the Rangers. I think the Penguins are going to miss by 1, and I don't think the Rangers miss by any more than 4. I think they're going to be right there.
I mean, I just have them sneaking in by like getting in over Pittsburgh. I mean, I put them over teams like New Jersey, who people are picking to make the playoffs, but New Jersey's got some question marks, specifically in the net.
Let's talk about New Jersey for a second here, because while our friend Pete did not submit any predictions. He gave me a take where he said Taylor Hall stays healthy, the Devils are a top 3 team in the league. I see a lot of people putting him in that playoff conversation. Our friend Tim did not put them in the playoffs, but he put them as the first team out over teams like the Panthers and the Islanders and the Hurricanes, which I want to talk about that too in a little bit. But what do you make of this New Jersey Devils team?
They're going to be exciting. I mean, they'll be much more exciting than they have been in the past. You add, even just personality-wise, you add PK Subban to that lineup, and it's instantly more vibrant and fun to talk about a hockey team than it otherwise would have been. Jack Hughes is electric, absolutely electric. He's going to light the league on fire. I think he wins the Calder. I mean, like, that's just the position he's going to be put in New Jersey to succeed is going to be so great because he's going to be surrounded by talent no matter where he plays in the lineup, like in the top 2 lines, because he obviously made the opening night lineup. Like, you're not going to send your number 1 overall pick down.
As long as he's healthy, he's playing hockey.
So, like, he could be like he could in theory be playing alongside of Taylor Hall and Kyle Palmieri, or he could be playing alongside of Kyle Palmieri and Wayne Simmons, or any combination of guys that
Nico Heishay's up there, Pavel Zacha's still up there.
Yeah, so it's like they're good, and everybody knows their defense is decent, like is good. They have Damon Severson, you add PK Subban, you have Ty Smith, some young guys. It's gonna be it's a good core. Like that D core is serviceable, and it's young enough that it'll grow into itself and become a really good defensive core in the league. You still have Andy Green back there. John Moore, I think, is still on the team. So like it's good, but I wouldn't trust Corey Schneider as far as I could throw him now, because he doesn't look like the elite goaltender coming out of Vancouver that we all thought he was. Even his first so many years in New Jersey, he looked like the elite goaltender we thought he were getting, and then we found his hips were made of glass and his groin was made of even thinner glass.
Even thinner glass. Stained glass.
So like he's in and out of the lineup so frequently that like I don't know if I could bet money on him. And I like Mackenzie Blackwood, but he's young, and I don't want to bet money on Mackenzie Blackwood because I'm going to lose.
Especially in this division.
Right. Like, they get subpar goaltending, they go nowhere. They spin tires. That's it. They're going to be stuck in the mud. So that's really what it comes down to.
He said, and I asked him, he said Devils will be a top 3 team if in the division if Hall can stay healthy. It's that simple, and they have serious depth. I said, how do you feel about the goaltenders? He said, Blackwood is a very solid backup, but for now, if Schneider stays healthy, he will be good. He said he looked good in preseason. I'm on Team U. I don't think, and I'm a minority in a lot of the hockey community where I don't even think Schneider healthy is that great. I mean, he had a really good first couple of seasons, and then even when he was healthy, I mean, it wasn't his fault he wasn't winning last year, but I'm not sold on him being able to take this team to the playoffs, and I'm not sold on Mackenzie Blackwood if Schneider goes down, starting 60 games and getting you 40 wins out of that, which you're going to need in this division. I'm not sold on the goaltending. I think the Devils are going to be very exciting to watch. I don't think they make the playoffs because I don't like their goaltending. It just comes down to that. It's just that simple. It's too competitive for them to make it with subpar goaltending.
I agree. I mean, a lot of it. I have similar picks about feelings about Detroit.
Right.
Detroit has decent forward depth, has okay defense. They're growing into it. I think Mo Seider made the team out of camp. He's looked okay. I think Philip Zadina's finally ready to take the next step at some point this season and become the player they thought he was going to be, because everyone was comparing him to Andrei Svechnikov early on, and obviously Andrei Svechnikov has turned into a stud despite getting beat up by Ovechkin in the playoffs last year and actually getting concussed. But hey, you can't blame the guy.
Right.
He got punched in the head by Ovechkin. It happens.
He stood up for his team and he paid the price.
Yeah. So I think Philip Zadina is ready to take the next step and be a contributing member of this Detroit Red Wings offense. But Jimmy Howard is well past his prime as a goaltender. He's in the twilight of his carear.
And I think Bernier's still the backup.
I think Jonathan Bernier is the backup. I think Jonathan Bernier is in a weird spot in his career where he's widely believed to be a 1B goaltender. He's not a backup, but he's not good enough to start on his own.
A perennial underperformer.
So the teams that are giving him chances are teams that have starters that they know aren't going to be able to start the whole 60 games, that they can give 35 games to and be serviceable in those 35 games. So he's kind of in this weird spot where he's kind of like an opener in baseball, right?
Right.
He's a guy you can throw in there to start games, but you don't want him going long.
He's not going to go 7 innings.
Yeah, he gets in and he gets out. The opener is what I think I call it a starter. The opener. He gets in for an inning, maybe 2 innings, and then he's out. And let's come to Jonathan Bernier. He's like that weird spot where like he's not a traditional position. He's not a backup. He's not a starter. He's just there. Like he just takes up a roster spot, and I don't know what to make of him. So that really is my issue with Detroit. And I mean, like Ottawa's Ottawa. Like Ottawa's not making the playoffs because they're icing an AHL team essentially.
Yeah, I feel for Senators fans. I do want to take this out west because our friend Ryan put in predictions, and he predicted the San Jose Sharks to win the Pacific, which I put the Sharks in second wildcard spot. You had them in spot number 2, and our friend Tim also has them in second wildcard spot. I asked him about that because I said you put them very high in a division that also carries teams like the Flames, who he put in number 3, which you had the Flames as winning the Pacific. I had the Flames as winning the Pacific. Our friend Tim has the Flames as winning the Pacific.
I have the Flames winning the West.
I do as well. So that's why I wanted to... Or no, I believe... No, I do have the Flames winning the West, right? I asked him about that because I said, you put the Sharks very high. I said, how do you feel about the team this year? And he said, I still like the Sharks a lot. I think LeBlanc will have a good year, and Jones is a pretty solid goalie when he's on his game. The D is still pretty solid, and I can see guys like Timo Meier and Tomas Hertl are getting even better. I said, I think the Pacific is a bit weak, so that will help them out with that roster. And he said, I just feel the Flames are going to fall because of goaltending and also Giordano getting older. What is your take on the San Jose Sharks and the current roster that they're fielding?
I mean, it's older. I think their window is closed. I don't think they're a Stanley Cup team. I don't even really think they get far into the playoffs. I just think they make the playoffs. I mean, their division's really weak. I mean, when you're competing against Edmonton, Vancouver, and LA, and Anaheim for wins, like for points, you're usually going to come on the winning end of that when you have Logan Couture, Timo Meier, guys like that. And then your back end consists of Erik Karlsson, Brett Burns, and Pierre-Edouard Vlasic. But my issue is it's not Erik Karlsson, best defenseman in the league, Erik Karlsson anymore.
No.
Because since he's had those injuries, his foot pretty much reconstructed. He had his groin pretty much reconstructed. Like, the guy isn't the player he was. He's still top 5 in my opinion. He's still an elite NHL defenseman. Like, he's still a better skater than a lot of guys, but he doesn't have that extra gear that he used to have. And that's my way of getting older, too. I mean, he just doesn't have that explosive edge to his game that he used to. And that's fine. I mean, I know a lot of guys get older and lose that explosive edge, but I think that was so integral to his game.
Right, that was a large part of his identity as a player.
That, like, he's had to adjust his game in a way that I think isn't going to be as offensively explosive. I don't think he gets over the 80-point mark again. I think he's like 65, 70-point defenseman. That's great in the NHL. I mean, Brett Burns is an 80-plus point defenseman. I mean, Brett Burns also...
He's basically a forward.
Yeah, like, I like Brett Burns, but I just don't think he defends well enough that it warrants that. Like Erik Karlsson as well doesn't defend well enough. He's better than Brett Burns and he's better than he's ever been in his own end, but I just don't think he defends like a guy like Drew Doughty does.
Right.
Or Pierre, even Vlasic. Vlasic is a better defender than anybody else in that team. And they have a couple of young defensemen who are stepping into big spots in that lineup in the number 4 and number 5 holes. And that number 4 hole is a lot of minutes. Like, they're going to be eating minutes alongside of Pierre-Edouard Vlasic. And I just don't think that decor holds up in front of a goaltender in Martin Jones, who literally looked like an AHL backup in the first round against Calgary.
Against the Knights.
In the Knights. Like, in the first 3 games, he looked absolutely terrible. He looked like he didn't know how to play the position.
It was bad.
I mean, did he turn it on? No. The team got better in front of him, and he managed to put together serviceable goaltending and make the saves he had to make, and they got by. And they got to Game 7 of... They got to the Western Conference Final, right? They lost. St. Louis beat them.
Yes, because St. Louis beat the Stars in the second round.
Yeah, so they got to the Western Conference Final, again, coming out of their division. Not that surprising. The division wasn't very good. The team was also better. They still had Joe Pavelski at that point. Losing Joe Pavelski is a big problem. You're losing 40 goals.
And they're losing a big guy in front of the net who... His stats don't always show up on the stat sheet, but he's a big part of that offense.
Right, exactly. And again, like those 40 goals are hard to replace. You have Joe Thornton, who's had both of his knees. He's pretty much the bionic man. Like, he might as well be Steve Austin.
He's RoboCop.
Yeah, he's got 2 robot knees now. Like, the man is 3 years old. Like, he's not that old. I think he's 40. But, like, he's played so much hockey in his career, and he played in such a physical era early on in his career, coming in like 1999 when he did, that like his body caught up to him. He's not the elite playmaker he was. He should not in any roster on God's green earth be getting top 6 minutes. But he might end up getting top 6 minutes or even top unit power play minutes on this team, and that's kind of an issue. Do I think Logan Couture is an elite NHL center iceman? Yeah, of course. I mean, he single-handedly propelled them past the Vegas Golden Knights in Game 7. Like, scored 2 goals, I think, out of the 3 they scored to tie the game.
Yep.
So it's like he willed them past the
basically
Vegas
willed
Golden
them
Knights
into the second round.
So I mean, like and when they went to the Stanley Cup final, he was leading the NHL in points in the playoffs. So like I think he's proven that he is like an 80+ point centerman. But again, I just don't know where they're getting more depth goal scoring from, and their defense in the bottom half is just not as deep or as strong as other teams. But I still think they'll be able to beat up on teams like Edmonton and Vancouver, and especially teams like LA, which is what will get them into the playoffs. Where if they were in any other division, I have them in a 7 or 8 hole easy.
Yeah. Well, because there's another thing that Ryan said. He said he thinks Calgary's going to fall because of the goaltending. We know that they basically traded without trading Mike Smith to the Edmonton Oilers for Cam Talbot. Still have David Riddick. What do you think about Calgary Flames goaltending?
Well, David Riddick was the opening night starter, so I think it's like they're gonna try and find a way to split time with David Riddick and Cam Talbot in like a pretty fair fashion. But I think at some point David Riddick will take the net and it'll be his net. I also think people really sleep on Cam Talbot because he's proven behind good teams he can play well. I mean, he took that Edmonton team to Game 7 on the verge of a Western Conference final, and the only reason they lost was a blown goaltender interference call in overtime. So like, behind a team like Calgary, who's got a great D-core, has been notoriously stingy, and isn't exactly the most exciting team to watch after a certain point because it really is like a defense first. And Mark Giordano is like a fine wine; he's only getting better with age. I mean, at some point you reach a point where you stop getting better, and but I think he'll be like Zdeno Chara, playing meaningful minutes late into his career, especially with a late career renaissance he had, similar to Zdeno Chara, because Zdeno Chara went to the Bruins, I think at 31 or 32 years old as a UFA, and had the best years of his career with the Bruins. People forget, like, he wasn't the player he was with the Bruins in Ottawa. Like, the Ottawa Senators obviously didn't think much of him. They took Wade Redden over him.
Right.
So he went to the Bruins and became the Bruins' #1 defenseman, captain, all these things. Mark Giordano, I think, is a similar fashion. Left for the KHL, came back, and is now playing meaningful minutes, big minutes as a #1 defenseman on arguably the best team in the West. So I think he really helps. I mean, TJ Brody's good. Travis Hamonic is an elite #3 in my opinion. He could play, like, he could be a mediocre #2 on a lot of teams. Not to say that he can't do it, but like he wouldn't be like a high-end #2 defenseman, but an elite #3 defenseman. Like,
and he's had his fair share of injuries as well. He's had concussion problems, and I after he took one concussion, I remember specifically with the Islanders, he really was never the same since. So,
but I still think he's a high-end #3 guy. Like, he can play top pair minutes, but he slots in very nicely into a #3 spot where he's matching up against not Sidney Crosby, but he can take, or even Evgeny Malkin in a lot of situations. But like, he's not taking on Jack Eichel, but he can take on like their #2 center and do really well by shutting down a second line.
Right.
Like, there's nothing wrong with it. He's a top line penalty killer. Like, he's very good in his own end. I just don't think he's mobile enough. And then again, like I said, I think David Riddick proved a lot. Like, he played meaningful hockey. He played big, and Mike Smith played better than him down the stretch. But you have to remember, David Riddick's coming into a team and he's playing more games than he's ever played in his career. And
he's still young.
Goaltenders get tired. It's more of like a mental wear than it is physical wear. Like, after a while, it's taxing being ready to go day after day after day after day. It wears on guys. And like in his rookie season, he still put up respectable numbers and still provided more than serviceable goaltending to a team that I think can score a lot of goals. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk, Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, Elias Lindholm, like
the new James Neal ?
Well, James Neal went to Edmonton.
Oh, right.
They got Milan
Lucic. Right. That's
Lucic adds
the new Milan Lucic ?
Nah, he's playing fourth line minutes probably. I mean, even like Sam Bennett could play on that #2 line and be effective. I think Sam Bennett might have a breakout year. This might finally be the year where you see him be the first round pick they thought he was going to be. So I think, Calgary, in my opinion, wins the division again. And again, like, it's still the division too. Like, they're beating up on Edmonton, Vancouver, LA, Anaheim, all teams that I think are going to struggle very heavily this year,
especially in the defensive zone with a lot of those teams.
Right, exactly. So like Johnny Ham and Cheese is not going to have a problem slicing apart the LA Kings defense, which is older and slow, or the Edmonton Oilers, who just lost their number one defenseman and had to call up Evan Bouchard today, who I think very highly of, but is Evan Bouchard ready to take over Adam Larson's minutes?
And they're relying on a 38, 39-year-old Mike Smith to be able to keep up what he did last year.
I think Mike Smith can do it. I think he'll be a good goaltender. I think he'll provide very, very good goaltending to this team. To that team, it's just Edmonton itself is a mess. Like, I don't see that team sniffing a playoff spot. Honestly.
Yeah, no.
I honestly have them losing out. I think I have them in last place in the division. I think I have LA better than them. Yeah, I have LA and Anaheim finishing ahead of Edmonton.
I just don't trust that goaltending as far as I can throw.
Well, if Mike Smith, if it was Mike Smith and David Rittich in Edmonton, I would bet on that because that's two serviceable goaltenders. But it's Mike Smith and then Mikko Koskinen, who after 21 games of NHL service gets a $4.5 million contract with a no trade clause,
which is absurd.
So
absurd.
And then it has an absolute 3 Mile Island sized nuclear meltdown in the second half. I could see his meltdown from space.
Yeah, that was I don't understand their take on that at all. Yeah, it was a mess.
They have some decent forward depth. Center depth is honestly their center depth might be some of the best in the NHL. Number 1, Connor McDavid, best player in the league. Number 2, Leon Draisaitl, top 5 player in the league. Number 3,
they are splitting them up this year. Yeah.
Number 3, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, high-end number 2 center on any other team in the league.
Yeah, it was interesting because in the opening game, Nuge was on the wing, or Nuge was centering Draisaitl on the second line. But I don't think that, I agree that they're going to score a ton of goals. Zach Kassian was on the top 6. I think that guy's a joke.
Jesse Puljujarvi is probably the dumbest man on the planet. He wants out of this team, and there is no better opportunity than to seize a top 6 scoring winger role than Edmonton. He wants to be the 40-goal scorer, and he doesn't have much of a case because you look at everybody else in his draft class; they're all up over 100 points already. I'm pretty sure he was
now he's in the KHL.
I'm pretty sure he had the Connor McDavid draft. So he goes over to Europe. He wants out of Edmonton. It might be a culture thing or whatever, but there's a whole new culture, new coach, new GM. GM is a Hall of Fame GM in Ken Holland, who built arguably one of the greatest teams of all time in the late 90s, early 2000s Detroit Red Wings team. He built a team that made 25 consecutive playoff runs.
Yeah, that team was stupid.
I mean, at some point, at the end of the tenure, I think it was wrong for them to keep making the playoffs because it was depleting their farm system.
Yeah.
They were essentially making the playoffs for the sake of the streak, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. Ken Holland's still a great general manager, and he's in Edmonton. Their coach, Dave Tippett, is known as... He's a good coach. I mean, he made that Arizona team that was mediocre, and he made them competitive for a lot of years. I mean, they played for a Western Conference final. They went 6 games with the LA Kings.
And that was peak LA Kings as well.
2012 LA Kings with before pre-cokehead Jeff Carter. No, pre-cokehead Mike Richards. Not Jeff Carter. Jeff Carter's party animal, but not a cokehead. But you see what I'm saying? There's something there.
There's hope for that organization.
So for Jesse Puljujarvi to pull out and be like, I don't want to be a part of this, it's like, hey, numbnuts. There's no other team in the league that has a hole in both of their top lines for a scoring winger than in Edmonton. And you get to play alongside Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, or Ryan Nugent-Hopkins.
Well, they had Zach Kassian in the top, and then I'm going to pull up their roster real quick here because I forget the kids' names, something GY good.
Yeah, I don't know, but they have also
had two guys.
I think Taylor Yamamoto is going to step into that team, I think, and have a good rookie year. But
they have 2 guys essentially playing top 6 minutes who probably shouldn't be. I know that they're really high on Zach Kassian. Oh, he had a goal and assist his first night. I don't care.
I mean, I could have a goal and assist playing alongside Connor McDavid. I just stand in front of the net and he hits me with the puck. It goes in.
But no, I agree. Not a fan of the Oilers roster. I think Puljujarvi is an idiot. Joachim Nygard.
James Neal can slide into that top 6, and I think he might be a 25 goal scorer because he's playing alongside some of the best players in the league. I mean, Riley Sheehan's not bad.
But it's never the goal scoring that we're worried about with Edmonton.
No, it's going to keep the puck out of their net, and they can't. I mean, the new rule in the league, I don't like the new helmet rule, where if the helmet comes off, you either have to put it on or leave the play, which they adopted from international ice.
There is a provision.
It literally cost the Edmonton Oilers a goal.
Yeah.
Connor McDavid gets hit, the helmet comes off, and either he has to now exit the ice surface, which is, I think it was the second period, so he has to exit the zone. On the long change. Or he has to put his helmet back on before he can join the play. He literally is in the middle struggling to get his helmet on as the guy he's supposed to be covering scores the goal. And you can see the look on his face, and it was the same look I had on my face, which is, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, if you want to say, like, if you're not in the play and you want to tell him to put his helmet on, whatever. But in the middle of the play, are you serious? You want to expect him to stop and put his helmet on or leave the ice surface? They're professionals.
Well, because there is a provision in that rule that says if you're part of a continuous play, you can finish the play. The problem is, and the way this was explained on the Sportsnet podcast, is that if the referee directs you to put your helmet on and you don't, he's going to call it. So if it's part of a continuous play, yes, you can finish the play, but the referee told McDavid to put his helmet on. He doesn't have a choice now. It's either a penalty or he puts his helmet on.
The other issue is, like...
And it's a judgment call. And
what are you going to judge a continuous play to be? Because in my opinion, Connor McDavid's still part of a continuous play. He gets hit, his helmet comes off, and the puck goes on the other side of the ice. But he is still...
He was still chasing JT Miller.
He's still obligated to cover the guy in the slot, but he can't do that, and he can't do his job because the helmet came off. I mean, it's a one-time thing. But I still don't agree with the rule because I said something stupid like this was going to happen, and literally in the first 2 days of the season, something stupid happens, and it cost Edmonton a goal. I mean, they ended up winning the game anyway, but still.
But imagine if this was Game 7 Stanley Cup Finals and
overtime,
and it's causing somebody to get... Yeah, it's a dumb rule. It's an interpretation rule, and I don't like it. I'm on your side on this one.
I mean, I just think, like, they're professionals. Like, I know the argument they're professionals is dumb, but, like, it's at some point they are professionals. They understand the risk they take when they get on the ice. Like, I mean, do I think in reaction to the Erik Karlsson thing when he got his leg cut, I did think the NHL should have adopted Kevlar socks because that doesn't change anything fundamentally about hockey. That's just a safety thing.
Right.
Now, if you get grazed with a skate, you're not going to get your leg cut, and it's not detrimental to your career.
Well, it's like the new visor rule where it's not necessarily changing the fundamentals of the game. It's just some of the older guys had to adjust or they got grandfathered in.
Yeah, and it's like the helmet rule. Like, you just have to understand, like, sticks come up. There's no reason to take, like, something permanent into consideration. And then you might be saying, oh, well, the helmet rule prevents somebody from, like, if they fall and hit their head. But it's like, you can fall and hit your head at any point on the ice, and it could be detrimental to your career.
Right.
So, the helmet thing, it's just like, I just think you should be able to let them play. Like, they are professionals, they understand the risk they took, and if he wants to stop and put his helmet back on, he can, or he can finish the play. Like, in any other circumstance, Connor McDavid just finishes that play, that goal doesn't go in.
Right.
Like, and then he worries about his helmet. But, like,
right.
The helmet is now the first, like, I don't know. I just think it's dumb. The new face-off rule is interesting.
The way you get to choose your side, yeah.
Yeah, to open a power play. I mean, I kind of understand it. Like, you're extra penalizing the team that took the penalty. Like, you know, you're giving the team that won the advantage.
Another advantage.
Like the advantage, which I understand to some degree. I mean, is it kind of iffy and like, is it kind of like a rabbit hole? Yeah, but I mean, for right now, I'm not terribly worried about it. I don't know.
Yeah, there's just interesting rule changes that are happening this year. Some of them we'll have to see how they play out. Obviously, one of them reared its ugly head already, unfortunately. Kind of going along here, do you have anything last you want to kind of talk about?
Do you want to we can like record another piece and just like stitch them together if you want, like another day.
Yeah, we could do a two-parter on this. So we're gonna chop it here. We'll call this part 1. We're gonna do two-parters because there's still a lot of teams I want to talk about.
Yeah, I still want to talk about the Atlantic and Central Division.
So we're gonna chop it here, two-parter. Real quick before we end part 1. Too early Stanley Cup Finals prediction.
My Stanley Cup final. I think Toronto gets to the Eastern Conference Final, but I think I'm gonna go with Toronto Maple Leafs, Colorado Avalanche Stanley Cup Final.
Who's winning how many games?
Toronto in 7. I think it'll be fast. It'll be exciting.
That would be a lot of goals that series.
Oh yeah.
My pick is I have the Toronto Maple Leafs over the Dallas Stars in 6. I love the Dallas Stars. We can talk about that more in part 2. Think they're a great team. Think Toronto Maple Leafs are a very exciting team as well.
Oh, I'm a big fan of Dallas Stars. I just think Colorado right now is primed in a position to be ready to play big games.
So we're gonna chop it here. This is part 1 of season predictions. Part 2 will come out. Who knows? Whatever. We'll have to figure it out. Maybe this week. Maybe sometime early next week. We will see. So part 1 season predictions is over. Thank you guys for listening. Keep your eyes out. I'm gonna try to be working to get this audio version on SoundCloud and maybe even Apple Podcasts at some point. So thank you guys for listening. We will see you guys with part 2 of the standings predictions. And I'm just want to say that I'm stoked that the season is back, and I'm looking forward to some good hockey and some good hockey podcasting this year.
There you go.
So thank you guys for listening, and we will see you guys next time.